Good morning, everyone. Just to let you know that we're experiencing some challenges with our technology. And of course, you know, technology is wonderful until you actually have to use it. But just bear with us. And if we have to stop and work our way through something, we'll just take our time and do with that the best we can. So just so you know, it's not going to be the same as usual, the way we got things set up this morning. So I'm going to make you aware that council meetings are available live through Zoom, and recordings may be posted online on County of Huron's YouTube channel. You may be seen and or heard as part of these broadcasts, and your name, comments, and or presentation materials will become part of the public record. So I'm going to call this public meeting to order and advise that the purpose of this public meeting is the purpose to initiate amendment to amend the County of Huron official plan to ensure consistency with the 2024 provincial planning statement. A copy of the official plan amendment number 6 is available. And I'm going to start off asking, is there any declaration of pecuniary interest to disclose at this time? Seeing none, then the order of business is first that we have the County of Huron official plan amendment number 6, and Denise Van Amersfoort is with us this morning. And welcome, Denise, and you're going to present this to us.
Thank you very much, Warden. Good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure this morning to provide an overview of County Official Plan Amendment number 6, and that's to the County of Huron official plan. So the purpose of Amendment number 6 is to bring the county plan into conformity with the new provincial planning statement that came into force and effect in October of last year. In terms of the timeline, County Council did initiate amendment to the county official plan in December of last year. We provided a copy of the draft amendment in March. Since that time, we've been doing consultation with agencies and stakeholders that would have an interest. And we're now before County Council this morning with the public meeting. So some of the consultation that we've done with agencies and stakeholders, we prioritized in-person consultation with interested stakeholders. That's certainly a really productive way to receive feedback. In many cases, the partners did not provide written correspondence, but did provide verbal comments as to the proposed amendment, including all of the local municipalities. You would have seen a report come to local council, the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, Chippewas of Kettle and Stony Point, the Huron County Federation of Agriculture, Huron Perth Public Health, the Local Builders Association, and the Planning Advisory Committee for the county. In terms of the Planning Advisory Committee, just a note that all upper tier municipalities are required to have this committee. In this case, the county has designated the Committee of Council Sustainable Huron to act as the Planning Advisory Committee. And this is due to the broad perspectives and diverse range of stakeholders we have on that committee. And their consultation was held at the end of March. Several members of County Council would have participated, including the warden. So as we know, Ontario has a provincial-led land use system, and what we are required to do is to make sure that all of our planning documents and policy frameworks at the county level are consistent with provincial direction. So this is not a 5-year review of the county official plan. This is a much more focused technical amendment focusing on those items which are required to be changed to achieve conformity or consistency with the provincial plan. So it's not the full range of considerations we would have in an official plan. It's much more defined in this case. So I will start walking through some of the high-level changes from the provincial level, and what does that mean then for Huron County? What needs to change in our policy framework here? So we'll start with agriculture. Generally, the direction from the province is to maintain a strong focus on farmland preservation. The existing policies in the county do this well. I would note that this was also a very strong direction from Huron County Federation of Agriculture. When we sat down with their land use planning committee, they did indicate that they are, continue to look for strong advocacy on behalf of the county for farmland protection and helping make sure farmers can continue to farm. In terms of what it means for Huron, we do have several amendments. While our agricultural policies are in great shape, we do have some amendments which include stronger support for agricultural systems planning, new requirements for a study that's going to be known as an agricultural impact assessment, and that will be required when limited non-residential development is proposed in a prime ag area. So an example of that would be a new gravel pit, for example, or a new golf course. They would need to do an agricultural impact assessment. We also want to sort of re-emphasize the county's work that we did in terms of the housing friendly lens and specifically support for additional residential units in agricultural settings. Those are already permitted in all of the local official plans as well as the zoning bylaws. They are as of right, and we're just further reflecting that in the county plan. We also wanted to enhance the direction for renewable energy infrastructure as we anticipate there may be new proposals on prime ag lands. And finally, implementing the direction from County Council to reduce the age of a surplus farm dwelling severance or surplus farm dwelling from 15 to 10 years in the event that that dwelling doesn't replace a residence which had already been on the property. There we go, planning for energy supply. So there is some new direction from the provincial planning statement, which involves having supportive policies for new energy storage systems, renewable energy systems, and alternative energy systems. So some of those things we've already seen right here in Huron. So compressed air energy, we already have. One of the first examples of compressed air energy is here in Goderich on Mill Road. It's possible we will see other different types of energy storage projects come across. And so we wanted to make sure that the policies were revised to consider that. Just going to pause for a moment. Clerk Cronin, did you want me to unmute my microphone on here? I'm going to, no, very good. Thank you. Thank you. So the direction that we're changing in the county official plan, we already have some policies, but we want it to be very clear that commercial scale energy projects, where they can locate outside of the prime agricultural lands, we would like to see that done first. In the event that they cannot locate outside of the prime ag area, so the example would be wind turbines, for example, that's not going to be realistic to be inside of a settlement area. Where they are going to be outside in the prime ag area, they would be required to do an agricultural impact assessment so that we're fully considering what is the impact on prime ag lands as a result of those new projects. I would also note that we have made the addition of compressed air storage to examples of renewable energy systems. And this is again directly from the province. There is, I would say, new support for compressed air energy on exhausted mineral aggregate extraction properties. Planning for the economy. Again, very important to make sure that land use planning fully considers economic sustainability and economic impacts. And this is the new direction from the province. Things that we have changed in Huron, we want it to be very clear. There has been some change in terms of the living wage. So we've reflected the changes over the past 5 years, an increase from $17.55 to $23.05. That's a fairly substantial increase. And we want to be thinking about what does that mean in terms of need in our community? What does that mean in terms of housing demand, affordability, day-to-day expenses, and how do we consider that when we're looking at new developments within community? We wanted to make sure that any new economic activity has regard for climate change adaptation and the overall impacts of a changing climate. And finally, continued direction to make sure that we are protecting those existing employment areas, existing uses from any encroaching sensitive uses that would make it difficult for those operators to continue to operate within provincial guidelines. So if I use an example, if I'll think of a large scale feed mill that might have an environmental compliance approval, we want to make sure that no encroaching development is going to jeopardize their ability to continue to operate within air emissions requirements, for example. So there is a focus on planning for impacts of a changing climate. So there is some new sections in the provincial plan. What we're going to do, we don't need to make a lot of changes here. There is some new policy that talks about enhanced direction, that all development needs to consider the impacts of a changing climate, related mitigation and adaptation measures. We're also recognizing the county's corporate climate adaptation plan within the official plan. That's work that's been done since the time of our last 5-year review, and so we wanted to make sure that it was reflected. What I would also note is that in addition to the important work that goes on in terms of changing for impacts of a changing climate, there's already really great work being done. And I thought I'd bring County Council's attention. This is a document that was released earlier this year by the Climate Risk Institute, as well as the Ontario Professional Planners Institute, and it focuses on climate change adaptation. In it, they featured 12 projects from across Ontario, and 2 of the projects are from Huron County. One of which is the Bayfield Secondary Plan. The second is a Sauble Bayfield Conservation Authority Shoreline Management Plan. So this is evidence that the planning work that's being done in Huron already considers climate change. This is something we're already doing very well, and we will continue to do so. In terms of our cultural or natural and cultural resources, not a lot of change from the provincial level, but there have been a few shifts that I did want to make County Council aware of. Firstly, from the natural environment perspective, we are reducing adjacent lands to 30 meters for all features. Previously, it was 120 meters for provincially significant wetlands and 50 meters for all other natural heritage features, and this is being reduced down to 30 meters as a result of provincial direction. We're also implementing the scoped update to the Huron County aggregate strategy that was approved by County Council earlier this year. In terms of Huron, I mean, again, this doesn't have a lot of change in how we're doing business. There are a few changes just to reflect in terms of the direction for aggregates, just to make sure that we are being very clear about where we're directing for aggregate extraction to occur and under sort of what conditions that we're looking for both social, economic, and environmental impacts to be minimized. Settlement areas, a lot of change here in the provincial planning statement, though I would note that much of it is not applicable for Huron's context. What we do want to reflect is in the official plan, we have both population and housing projections. So we are updating those figures with the 2024 study that was done for the county by Watson and Associates economists. We're also removing the requirements for a comprehensive review. This has been replaced by a series of planning tests, and these would apply at a time that we're looking to either expand a settlement area or make changes to an employment area. There's new direction from the province on complete communities and making sure that we're considering really the holistic picture of a community, everything from childcare centers to schools to trails, parks, housing needs. It's really that holistic picture and just re-emphasizing that direction within our official plan. Recognizing housing as a critical concern and also putting an emphasis on the need for housing that's affordable over time. This is a figure I've used with County Council several times. I think it still remains very relevant in that while things have perhaps dialed back in terms of the overall housing prices, what you can see is that we're still very far from where we were even 5 years ago in terms of housing affordability in the county. And so it definitely remains one of our main priorities. Finally, planning for meaningful and early engagement with Indigenous nations. So there is new direction from the province to ensure that we are incorporating within land use planning decisions traditional knowledge and the input of Indigenous nations. So we've made some changes to the plan to make sure that that's occurring. We've also included the land acknowledgement that was approved by County Council since the time of the last 5-year review. And we've included direction on the need for consultation methods. So there are a range of Indigenous nations that have an interest in the County of Huron. This is their traditional territory. Each one has slightly different perspectives and preferences when it comes to consultation. So this is no attempt to make sort of a one-size-fits-all policy. This is a commitment for early and meaningful consultation, and we will be working with each individual nation to determine how we can best and most efficiently do that with each individual group. So in balance, that is the summary of official plan amendment number 6 to the county official plan. I'm very happy to take any questions this morning. The recommendation is that my report be received for information and that the public meeting be held for the purpose of receiving public input. I would note that after today, the next steps would be that all correspondence received written or verbally at this morning's public meeting will be fully considered by staff. We will be identifying additional changes to the amendment as necessary to respond to those, to that input, and we'll be returning to County Council likely later in June with a staff report and a recommendation in regards to the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Denise. Councillor Vanstone, you have a question.
Okay, better. Okay, thank you very much. On the versus the gravel or the aggregates, it now will have to have a study through the for the agricultural part of it and the effect of the agriculture, because we just had a 200-acre farm tested this last month. So I'm just wondering how that's going to go and whether that will help the people, because we're a quarter of a mile from Ben Miller now with gravel if this goes through. So it's going to be an not an aggregate, and then disadvantage to a lot of people. So I was just wondering how that was going to work.
Thank you for the question. When it comes to rehabilitation, the idea is that they want to see the opportunity for gravel pits to be rehabilitated to an agricultural condition with the same soil capability if possible. And so that's what would be identified in an aggregate impact assessment. They would also be looking for opportunities for avoidance, minimization, or mitigation of impacts to the broader agricultural system. And then looking at where has, in the rehabilitation plan, where has an operator maximized the amount of agricultural land that can be put back into production after extraction. So it's fully recognized in the PPS that where there's below water table extraction, it's not realistic. We're obviously not going to have agricultural capability there, but in the remaining areas, can that agricultural land use be brought back? And that is the direction from the province. They'd like to see that where possible.
Yeah, follow up, Councillor Vanstone.
Yes. Well, I think then what we have to do as a county council is make sure the province then sends somebody out to inspect this, because this is what's happened in the past and probably will happen in the future. Like, we got to make sure the topsoil stays on these farms so they'll be put back. And so we need more policing of this. So I'd like to see a letter sent from this county council saying that we need this, looked after. Thank you.
Pass word again.
Yeah, my question is also on aggregate and pertaining to dust. You don't go into much detail on what is meant by that. And I'm just wondering, I'm assuming that it's at the production of aggregate that you're worried about the dust. My concern is county roads and highway roads have gravel along the shoulders, and we've had presentations here before about the dust from the shoulders becoming so bad that traffic can't pass, primarily agricultural equipment that's running on the shoulder and on the asphalt. And I just didn't know how is all this going to come together? Could you tell us a little more about what the dust and the dust study is?
So in the final section of the official plan under implementation, there are requirements for a complete application, and that is where there's been the addition of the word dust under potential studies that would be required at the time of development. It was added as a result of conversations I've had with members of the public, one of which is with us today, and I understand is going to give some comments. There's also been delegations to ACW Council recently in regards to dust concerns specifically related to gravel operations. What we're looking for from a planning standpoint is to make sure that no different than noise or other air emissions, just to make sure that at the time of development, it is demonstrated that the proposed land use will remain within provincial requirements for air emissions. So it could be dust, it could be noise, it could be vibration. So what we're looking for is demonstration of adherence to the provincial standards. This is something that would typically be required anyhow through something like an environmental compliance approval. If we go back to my feed mill example, that is something that they would have to be demonstrating compliance with anyhow. Because gravel operations do not have environmental compliance approvals, they have site plans that are approved under the Aggregate Resources Act. We felt it was appropriate to include specific mention of dust as it has been raised as a concern over time.
All right, I'm going to ask that we look at this motion. There is an opportunity further on in our agenda in this public meeting to address councillors' comments. So we'll do that then. At this time, for proper procedure, we're just going to address the motion that's before us. And if there's someone willing to do that, to receive this information. Councillor McClellan and Councillor Dietrich would second that. Those in favor? And that is carried. So there is some requirements that I'm going to read to you regarding this public meeting. This is a required public meeting under Section 17 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, for Amendment Number 6 to the Huron County Official Plan. Notice of the public meeting was given to persons and public bodies in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act. If you wish to be notified of the adoption of the proposed official plan amendment or of the refusal to adopt the official plan amendment, you must make a written request to Susan Cronin, Clerk of the County of Huron. If a person or public body does not make an oral submission at a public meeting or make a written submission to the County of Huron before the proposed official plan amendment is adopted, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the County of Huron to the Ontario Land Tribunal. If a person or public body does not make an oral submission at a public meeting or make a written submission to the County of Huron before the proposed official plan amendment is adopted, the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Land Tribunal, unless, in the opinion of the board, there are reasonable grounds to add the person or public body. So I'm going to go now to comments from the Planning and Development Department. And again, Denise is here in person to do that. And Denise, go ahead when you're ready with that.
I think we went a little out of order this morning, so my comments are complete.
All right, thank you. Back on track now. And I'm going to ask, is there anyone present from the public who wishes to speak in favor of the proposed official plan amendment number 6 to the Huron County official plan? And if so, then I'd ask you step to the podium or raise your hand online, and we'll ask if there's someone, then come up to the, and I think we're going to get you in Denise's hot seat here. And okay, and I'd ask if you give your name. Here or there?
Yes, yes.
So this is to speak in favor of the amendment number 6.
Yes.
Okay.
And good morning, everyone. I'm Gina McDonald, a resident of ACW in Huron County. Thank you for allowing me this opportunity to speak to all of you today. I'd like to start off by saying that it's great to see Huron County taking the initiative to favorably amend our official plan, helping us keep up with the times. While I'm happy to see this evolution, I believe we can create a more robust amendment, a more personal one that is tailored to the needs of our county, its municipalities, communities, and residents. In reviewing proposed Amendment 6, I found 2 issues that I'd like to mention today. One, although there's a dust study addition under other studies, 38.8.9, I believe there's an ideal section to make the dust requirements more robust under 17.5387. On March 18th, I made a delegation to the Township of ACW Council, bringing their attention to the World Health air quality standards. I would like to commend ACW Council for making their citizens' health a priority and requesting county planning staff investigate further the possibilities of incorporating the World Health Organization's, or WHO, aggregate air quality standards into the ACW official plan. Without going into too much detail here. Okay, sorry. Without going into too much detail here, as a more detailed report has been provided to the county's planning staff, I'm going to give you the Coles Notes version. Gravel extraction and crushing produces very fine particles, known as particulate matter, or PM 2.5, which are carcinogenic. These invisible particles, being so small and light, can travel very far. In Ontario, our air quality criteria were set by the Canadian Council of the Environment in 2012. The Ontario criteria are not based on health science. There is no legally binding standard to regulate ambient PM 2.5. In contrast, the WHO air quality guidelines around PM 2.5 were updated in 2021 and are based on reducing air pollution levels to enable countries to reduce the burden of disease and long and short-term illnesses. As uncontrollable PM 2.5 emissions increase with wildfires, it's important to take action to reduce preventable PM 2.5. Requiring pit owners to be responsible for monitoring PM 2.5 emissions is responsible management. Other types of open mining in Canada are required to monitor PM 2.5 to protect workers and nearby residents' health. Not wishing to impede industry in any way, the provincial government has put the burden of pollution control on communities. This is an opportunity for County Council to uphold the duty of protecting public health and incorporate the WHO's aggregate air quality control standards, just as the town of Caledon and the city of Burlington have done. 2, in 25-3-11, I'm relieved to see. I'm getting back for you now. Go ahead. In 25-3-11, I'm relieved to see an amendment to this section that adds the requirement for an agricultural impact assessment. Protecting our valuable farmland is of utmost importance. According to a recent article in the Rural Voice, quote, in the past 35 years, Ontario has lost 2.8 million acres, 18% of its farmland, to non-agricultural land uses like urbanization and aggregate mining, end quote. This kind of farmland loss is unsustainable, especially as our population increases and tariffs threaten our food security. Of equal importance is our water. Section 25-3-11 also addresses surface and groundwater protection. Currently, individual pit applications are treated each as their own entity, not taking neighboring pits into consideration. What are the cumulative impacts of so many below water table pits in any given area? Adding the requirement for a cumulative impact assessment to this section would help to protect our precious water. In conclusion, I'd like to see a more in-depth protection for our water and our health in the county's official plan, whether it be by incorporating more robust protection strategies into Amendment 6 or creating an Amendment 7 in the very near future. Thank you again for this opportunity. I'm happy to answer any questions council may have.
Thank you for your comments, Gina. And we're going to go on and ask if there's anyone else that would have any comments in favor of the amendment. And go ahead. Thank you, Gina.
At this time, I see no one else that wishes to speak in favor of this application. Sorry, come forward.
Sarah. And once you're ready, if you would just give us your name before you make your comments, please.
Thank you, Warden Heffer and Council, for hearing me speak. I am Sarah Merkel. I am a public health promoter with Huron Perth Public Health. I hold the built environment portfolio and part of the climate portfolio at HPPH. In the past months, I've had the pleasure of working alongside county staff on various projects, including the climate change risk and vulnerability assessment, participating in discussions around disseminating the newcomer housing experiences report and next steps, as well as providing feedback to South Huron and Central Huron's official plans. I grew up on a farm in Perth South. I live in Stratford with my husband, my 4 young children. The health and well-being of people is the product of where they live, learn, shop, work, and play. Official plans shape this environment, and we at Huron Perth Public Health are grateful for the opportunity to both submit comments through your review process, along with speaking with you today. As you finalize this draft official plan amendment and listen to my next points, I encourage you to put yourself in the shoes of people in your community and to view the plan from their perspectives as well. This could be newcomers to Canada or international agricultural workers, people with limited mobility, those with limited financial resources or without a vehicle, children and youth, and our aging population. I want to make sure that their voice is also represented through the plan. HPPH appreciates the addition of land acknowledgement and the language around early and meaningful consultation with Indigenous nations. As I reviewed the official plan amendment, there were 5 themes that I looked at. Your official plan already does an excellent job addressing these themes, so I wanted to take the opportunity to share why they're important from a public health perspective. The first theme is growth management and land use policies. As public health, we encourage creating complete neighborhoods and communities through mixed land use, intensification, infill development, and ensuring connectivity within neighborhoods and between where people live, learn, shop, work, and play. By creating safe, inviting spaces to walk or wheel, such as bike-friendly, accessible for wheelchairs and strollers. And it's so important to balance development with protecting our prime agricultural land. Theme 2 is the social connection and well-being. A socially connected community is a place where everyone feels like they belong. A socially connected community requires spaces and events for people to gather, create new friendships, and contribute to the community through volunteering. The role of well-designed physical spaces, whether natural or built, is helpful in encouraging people to gather, interact, and form meaningful relationships. You recently heard from my colleagues, Lindsay O'Donnell and Laura O'Rourke, speaking about the social connection primer for municipalities. Theme 3 is the environment, green space, and UV exposure. It's so important to protect and conserve the natural environment to ensure residents can breathe clean air, drink safe water, and have access to nature and green space, and to help mitigate extreme weather events and climate change. There is strong evidence that being in nature positively impacts stress levels, chronic disease risk, depression, and anxiety. Another consideration is that shade, either natural or built, can be an effective way of reducing UV exposure and its associated health risks, such as skin cancer, and should be an essential element when planning for and developing facilities, parks, and public spaces. Also to note that this was a theme that was included in the most recent version, Take Action for Sustainable Huron. Theme 4 is housing. Prioritizing affordable housing options through diverse housing forms, such as supporting triplexes and fourplexes, building up, expanding co-op housing, and exploring opportunities to partner with United Housing can lead to increased access to affordable housing, general health, mental health, and quality of life. Something else to consider, if we want young adults who are just starting out to move back to our rural communities to work, they require a smaller place to live with affordable rent. This is another action from the latest Sustainable Huron report. And the final theme, transportation and connectivity. This quote from BC Centre for Disease Control sums it up. And I recognize that there is limited public transportation opportunities in a more rural place, but this quote does speak to this a little bit. The convenience of public transit, the safety of cycling paths, and the distance and the time it takes to walk to common destinations all play a role in our daily choices about how we get to where we need to go. When transportation networks are designed to prioritize active transportation, such as walking and wheeling, mobility for all residents is encouraged, which leads to improved health outcomes, better physical and mental health, and the greater opportunities for social connectedness. An action from Sustainable Huron suggests the creation of multi-use pathways in communities. So in conclusion, what does this all of this come down to in setting the stage for lower tier municipalities, continue creating walkable, bikeable, accessible communities that are connected, install multi-use trails and pathways, continue to keep planting more trees, and finally, continue to keep supporting social connection infrastructure, such as benches, outdoor pavilions with picnic tables. I understand all of these things cost money, time, and resources, but they don't have to be completed overnight, rather planned for over the long term, invested in over time by the community. And an amendment such as this continues to create that support. I'm going to leave you with this quote I love from Plan H from BC Healthy Communities. Local government leaders are the most important decision makers when it comes to the physical design of communities. The decisions that you make today about planning and land use will impact the health of current residents and future generations. Thank you for hearing me speak.
Thank you for your comments in favor, Sarah. And I'm going to ask Clerk Cronin, is there any other indication of anyone wishing to speak in favor of the amendment?
I see no one else who wishes to speak in favor of this.
All right. Then I'm going to ask, is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition to this proposed amendment? And Clerk Cronin, are you aware of anybody online that would wish to speak in opposition?
At this time, I see no one who wishes to speak in opposition.
All right. And now, Huron County Council has an opportunity to ask questions and make comments. Past Warden McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Denise, I question the merit of putting in the living wage. And the reason I asked that question is at our last public health meeting, Kristen was there again from the United Way, gave her presentation and came well prepared to answer some good questions in the debate. So the figure that's there is only for a person that works 35 hours a week, not a 40 or a 44. And she says those figures certainly do drop off. And everything in the economy changes this figure on a regular basis. And we know in the last month, fuel prices have come down quite a bit. Prices could go up a lot in the next couple of months. We don't know what's going to happen, but I worry about putting a stagnant figure in there. And it looks like, here it's sitting for 5 years. Would we not be better referencing the actual report that we received from the United Way that goes into a lot more detail to explain how those figures come about rather than actually putting a dollar figure in there? And the reason for that concern is that if you actually had someone that had an interest in building an industry in Huron County, if they fell short on doing a lot of due diligence, but just looked up, oh, this is the wage that we should be paying or expected to be paying. But most factory work is normally 40 hours a week or 44. I would be concerned that that in itself might be part of somebody's calculation for a presentation about whether we were the right location or not to expand a business. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you for that comment. We can certainly consider if there's an adjustment to that policy that would reflect the concerns raised.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Noel.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I'm interested by this idea of the cumulative impact assessment for aggregate extraction. Just knowing that, for example, the MVCA is currently using sort of a whole ecosystem approach when they're dealing with issues and questions that they're trying to answer. So I just wondered if perhaps you could expand on what we're doing, what we could be doing. Is there anything preventing us from looking into this a little bit further? Just a little more robust information, if that's okay. Thank you.
Go ahead, Denise.
Thank you. So for any gravel pit application that comes forward, they may possibly need an official plan amendment, but they would definitely need a zoning bylaw amendment. As part of a complete application, if you read the last section of the official plan, it states all the studies that could be required, and we would determine based on the application and where it's located, which of those supporting studies would be required. One that's required in every case is a hydrogeologic assessment. That looks at impacts to not only the surface water, the groundwater, aquifer, wells, existing drinking water wells in location, as well as a community well from a source water perspective. Through those studies, they do look at the abutting land. So if there were two pits side by side, for example, and one proposed subwater extraction and the next was going to propose subwater extraction, it would be considered in the course of that technical study. In terms of going further, I just again remind council that the Aggregate Resource Act and the site plans are exclusively under the jurisdiction of the province, specifically the Ministry of Natural Resources. So we want to be careful that we aren't creating an expectation that we have the ability to influence or control something which is in fact outside of our sphere. So fully can consider if there's an opportunity for us to go a little bit further on cumulative impacts specifically for water, but I just would put that caution out there, and I will fully consider it for the next staff report.
Any other questions or comments from council? Councillor Klopp.
Thank you. The dust study, heard the discussion. I remember reading reports coming to all of us maybe a few years back, probably in direction to ACW. And so I was somewhat familiar with that. I just have a couple questions. Where is the province on this? As mentioned, there seems to be a lot of control on aggregates. So I would like to make sure that if we are pushing to have this dust control in, that the province isn't saying that, you know, that's our jurisdiction. So if that could be checked into, and maybe it has, but just for clarification. And then I guess I assume I heard the word potential study. So I guess clarification on that. If the province says we can add, then is it going to be potential? Do we make this, then we have to decide if it's going to be, or is it going to be, no, it has to be? So just, I want to clarify on that. Back up to agriculture, as pointed out, we have a pretty good discussion on any time there's land taken out of agriculture, whether it be a severance, which is still, from what I understand, allowed. But this impact assessment sounds good. I think we've been doing impact assessments. So I just would wonder, could you help clarify what is actually is the process and the work that is being added? Is that clear enough?
Yes, I can
Thank you.
Yes, I can address that within the subsequent staff report, but I would agree with your comments that I do believe in Huron County, we have been planning for impacts to the agricultural system. We just maybe haven't used that exact term, agricultural impact assessment. I can tell you that we are expecting formal guidance from OMAFA in terms of what their expectations are for that study, and we will be required to adhere to their terms of reference.
Follow up?
So I'm hearing that, yeah, we were going to have some more details coming to us, and that's great. Because there's always, it sounds good, but the devils are always in the detail.
Okay, any other comments? Councillor McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Through you to Denise. Good morning, Denise. Thank you for the report. I just want to talk a little bit about renewable energy on ag land. A year or two ago, we had a battery farm project brought before here in East Council. And for lack of a better word, we did have a public meeting and it was less than adequate to answer a lot of questions for us and also the residents as well. The residents have all, it was going in the same area where there is windmill farm as well. So of course they were a little bit concerned about it. We as Huron East Council, we passed a motion to oppose all battery storage farms on all ag land, I believe. I don't know. We talked about prime land, but I think we settled on all ag land. I think some of our thoughts were we'd like to try to push that either to brown fields or exhausted gravel pits. I know you mentioned about windmills. Obviously, they can't be put in a residential area, so they would have to be out in a rural area and possibly on good ag land. I just find that statement in here where it says, and I guess I'm kind of comparing that to the battery farm where it says projects like this would be allowed if conditions were necessary. I find that a little wishy-washy because I'm sure with a battery farm, they would have to make it work one way or another, or they could make it work one way or another, whether it's distance to the prime hydro line or something like that. So I just wondered if that could be tightened up a little bit. That's just my thoughts. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for the question. Certainly we'll provide further details in the next staff report, and we'll be referencing some of IESO's direction in terms of their new procurements and what is now we understand is a requirement is a storage component of any new project. So it's possible that some of the existing projects in Huron would have proposals for a storage component to be added after the fact, which is similar to what we saw in McKillop a couple years ago.
Councillor Vanstone.
Yes, excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Warden. Just a quick question. Who polices this, like the dust? Okay, so if there's dust rolling in on my property today because the wind's from the north, then tomorrow it's from the south. Who polices this dust, like to stop them from doing it, make them put calcium on or something to stop the dust? I'm just wondering if that's in there, and if it's not, we should address it.
Okay. If the source of the dust was to be an aggregate operation, then it would be under the ARA. So then it would be the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry, MNRF, who would be responsible for the inspections and enforcement on properties licensed under the Aggregate Resources Act. If it was dust from a farmer's field, there would be no, that's considered a normal farm practice. There would be no enforcement there. If it was from a large, as I say, feed mill or something of that nature, then it would be the Ministry of Environment under the environmental compliance approval.
All right. Last call. Any comments, questions from council? Seeing none, and then we're at the point in our public meeting where I'm going to ask our Director of Legislative Services and County Clerk, Susan Cronin, to advise of any written comments that have been received.
All comments that were received were, most comments that were received were included in the agenda. There were 4 additional pieces of correspondence that came in after the publication of the agenda, which the Manager of Planning has addressed in her overview. These will be included in the subsequent report that will be forwarded to Council.
Right. Thank you, Susan. It is Huron County Council's intention to pass a bylaw to adopt the official plan amendment number 6 to the Huron County official plan at the session of County Council on June 4th, 2025. The staff report will outline if comments received at the public meeting resulted in amendments to the proposed amendment. So with that, I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn our public meeting. That would be Councillor Goderich and Councillor Heffer. Those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. So we're just going to need a few minutes to get